I told them. Right.
Let's call to order the Town Council Study Committee meeting for Wednesday, August 7th. Go through the usual hybrid opening reading. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town has reserved the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public and some members of the committee to participate in the meeting. Attendees should join in listening mode, and they can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. I will attempt to call on people in the order they raise their hands and allow them to ask their question. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Joe Grouse. I'm chair of the Town Council Study Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Caroline? Here. Curtis?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
See Jill on there, Bo? Aye. And Joe Grouse is here, okay? There are no members of the staff here. Anticipated speakers, which are basically the folks from the Collins Center. Could I ask you to respond when I call your name, Anthony? Pat?
I can hear you here.
Okay, and then as Mel is not with us today?
Mel will not be at this meeting.
Okay. Oh, there's Joel. Okay. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town Council Study Committee meeting is being conducted remotely and actually on a hybrid basis pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature some public comment as well as public questions. For this meeting, the Town Council Study Committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted in the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I don't believe all supporting materials that have been provided to members of the body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Let's see, we're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker or a topic for the agenda, and then after any speakers conclude their remarks, I will allow members of the committee to ask their questions. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. I think that about covers that. I guess the first piece of business is the acceptance of the agenda. So can I have a motion to accept the agenda? All right, second. All right, Caroline?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bo? Joe Grouse, aye. All right. Okay. Sorry, Mike. We have a little bit of a twist into our agenda this afternoon. Curtis had a speaking engagement with the Sconset Homeowners Association the other night and met the spouse of the gentleman to my right, Mr. Lewis Crampton. Mr. Crampton is a town councilor. In fact, he's the vice chair of the Palm Beach Town Council. And Curtis gave me a call yesterday and asked whether we could let Mr. Crampton speak to us for a few minutes about how Palm Beach operates as a town under the town council form. So very much appreciate you taking the time, Lou. And as we chatted before the meeting, if I could leave you with sort of 15 minutes or so to tell us a little bit about how Palm Beach operates. kind of give us the 50,000-foot version, that would be much appreciated.
My colleagues would wonder if I could keep it to 15 minutes. So I'll kind of cover some facts about town, structure of the council, and my impressions of how it works. Maybe that'll be helpful to you. So the town of Palm Beach is roughly a permanent population of roughly 10,000 people, which expands to about 35,000 people in our season, which goes from October through April. So we're the opposite side of the coin from you folks. Our council has there are 6 members who are elected. One of them is a mayor and 5 are town councilors. We have a weak mayor system. The mayor does not vote on council issues. But the mayor does serve as the town's, I guess what I would call ceremonial head, and also serves as like our Secretary of State in terms of representation with the state of Florida's city commissions and with the county and with other organizations that we have to relate to. The head of the council, the chair, I'm the vice chair, runs the meetings and rules with an iron hand. Essentially, the mayor only votes to break ties on council positions. The town manager, we have a strong town manager, but everything that comes before the town manager has to be approved by us. So it's a lot like a board of directors of a corporation or of a company. Our structure is set up so that the town is divided into 5 districts. I represent District 1, which is the south end of town. But the elections are not district elections. The elections are at large. We have a kind of a hybrid system, in other words. So everybody runs for the whole island, but I'm representing District 1. The reason we have it divided that way is the scheduling of the elections. So we serve 2-year terms. So in year 1, the representatives of District 1, 3, and 5 all run an election for the entire town. In year 2, the representatives of District 2, 4, and the mayor all run for that year, and we all serve 2-year terms. As I said, we have a very weak mayor. The president of the council rules the meetings. The city manager, all of our departments report to the city manager, and the city manager reports to us. But we appoint the city manager, and we also appoint the department heads. We are a full service town. We have everything. We have our budget is over $100 million. We have our own public works department, our own fire rescue department, our own police department, and all of the other agencies that one would expect. The counties in Florida are very strong. I gather they're weak here in Massachusetts, but they're very strong in Florida. But it's an important relationship that we have with the county of Palm Beach, which is also getting quite wealthy. And then we are right on the doorstep of West Palm Beach, which is one of Florida's fastest growing cities. We are a barrier island. So we can be reached by 3 bridges and 1 causeway. And of course, some of you may have heard that our town is being cut in half by the Secret Service because of President Trump. Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach. And the Secret Service, because of the attempt on the president's life, or the former president's life, has now taken a big chunk of South Ocean Boulevard and called it off limits. So for me in the South End to visit my neighbors and actually to go to town hall, I have to go to West Palm Beach, follow up West Palm Beach and cross a bridge and make a left turn. So it's going to be quite a problem. So we function like a board of directors of a very large corporation, $100 million budget a year. As I say, everything comes before us. I've left a couple of our agendas. We meet twice a month, except when budget time. So the first meeting, which is on the second Tuesday of the month, covers everything with respect to the town business. Second meeting covers what we call development review, because we have a lot of people who want to do things for their homes, and we have to approve those. We appoint all the boards and commissions in the town, which includes ARCOM, which looks at the design of every home, every business, everything that is going to be seen by the public. Landmarks Commission basically deals with older houses. There's a legal process that the Landmark Commission does to bring before us candidates for landmark properties. And we will vote on that. Sometimes the property owner is not so pleased at having their home designated for landmark status, which means some of the things they are able to do to the exterior of their property is regulated by the town. And so sometimes those hearings get a little controversial. So we appoint our architectural review board, our landmarks board, our planning and zoning board, our code enforcement board, the recreation committee, the ocean and inlet, because beaches are very important to us. We're the town of Palm Beach, not the town of Palm. So we want to ensure that we have plenty of sand on our beaches, and we have a lot of intricate relationships going on with the feds and with the state and with others on that. And of course, the council has its own committees, just like Congress would. I am chair of the Business Administration Committee, and the biggest issue that I've been working on, and it's been like touching a third rail in town, is bringing paid parking to the town of Palm Beach. I can tell you the merchants on Worth Avenue, and you guys know what's going on here, the merchants on Worth Avenue and other kinds of places are having trouble with that, but we've convinced them that turnover is very important to their business. And one of the problems that we have had on Worth Avenue is their own employees get out there and park. Right. And that creates a problem for them. So they're reluctantly accepting paid parking in the town. And we have an ordinance and rules committee that reviews on its own the need for a rule, for example, the issue of how many native plants in landscape programs. So the ordinance and rules committee will ponder this. They'll hold a public hearing. People will come in, the landscapers will screen, the environmental advocates will screen, and then it will come before us for a vote. So we deal both with the big broad policy issues. One of the biggest ones that we have right now is zoning reform. Post-COVID, the town of Palm Beach was inundated with people moving into it and buying houses. Many of them came from wealthy communities, New York, Chicago, and they didn't want little houses, they wanted big houses. And when they wanted those big houses, of course, we had to approve them, but we were under a lot of pressure from the neighbors because those houses started to occlude people's views and do other kinds of things, so we had to step in. And a major issue right now is zoning reform in the town of Beach, and because our zoning code was last put together in 1982, we're doing a major zoning reform. So I'm on that committee. So yeah, questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I appreciate the summary. I have a question or two on what anybody else.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the finance committee.
Yes.
You have $100 million budget.
Yeah.
Who prepares it? Who reviews it? Who approves it?
Staff prepares the
The
budget.
town manager?
Town manager, actually, we have a deputy town manager for finance.
Okay,
The deputy town manager for finance, who used to hold a similar position in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, the city of Charlotte,
okay,
who's very good.
all right.
He prepares the budget. Actually, it's a bottom-up budget. The budget starts with each of the departments.
Department heads
Department heads put
request.
it together. The town manager gives a guidance. Department heads put it together. The process is managed by our deputy manager for finance.
Yeah.
Town manager presents it to us prior to, in a public session. Prior to that occurring, we have meetings with the town manager and the deputy town manager for finance.
And the departments
And the
included.
departments, if we want to talk to the departments, we'll have them in there. Generally, we do for police, fire, and public works, because that's about 2/3 of our budget. And actually, a huge portion of our budget is personnel costs. We pay our people a lot of money, and they've got very generous pensions. So we have to, we do want to find out where that money is going, and if there are overtime problems in the fire department, for example, or other kinds of issues, we want to make sure that those issues are being managed correctly.
Okay,
So it's a public process.
right.
It's presented to the town. The town works closely with the newspaper, the local newspaper, and with the civic associations to make sure that they get the word out to their constituents. So that when we have a public meeting in the budget, there might be 50 to 70 to 90 people there, depending if there's any controversy.
And they comment on the
They
budget?
comment on the budget. We will debate each other. I actually lost a debate on something. I wanted to increase the parking fees than what was in the budget. Because it's a great way to make more money. But my colleagues felt that we're just introducing paid parking this year. Let's go a little slowly.
Okay,
With respect to our budget and with respect to I've been on the council 8 years. Every one of those years, we have kept our millage rate the same, or we've lowered it. So we have a very good
but
situation.
your assessed valuation has gone up.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. So we have a requirement that every one of our major accounts has to have a reserve of 30% of appropriations.
wow,
We have around $20 million in free cash. Which is not assigned to any account, it's just sitting there. Which we can use for projects. The worry we have, obviously, we're gonna hit by hurricane. So we try to keep that money
Okay.
pretty closely borrowed. We have two money-making enterprises that are absolutely printing money for us. One is a marina, a downtown marina that we own
mhm,
and we run. And it's just printing money because people love to bring their yachts into Palm Beach and keep them there. And then we have a fantastic par 3 golf course designed by Raymond Floyd. That's ranked #2 after Augusta National as a par 3. And that brings in huge amounts of money. So we have enterprises that are making money for us too. And then finally, on the revenue side, fees for planning and zoning and architectural reviews and all that kind of stuff that we charge are pretty hefty. And so we make a fair amount of money. We have an enterprise fund.
Okay.
We have those funds where we can,
but there is public involvement and,
absolutely. there's
but you
public
make the
involvement.
decision.
Yeah, and we've had no real complaints or issues since I've been in the council.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Caroline?
I do.
Yeah.
Can you say more about, so the civic association and the various neighborhood groups, and the newspaper?
Yeah.
And the town's PR
Yeah.
keep very well coordinated.
Yes.
Can you just run with that a little more and say why
You know,
and
we
how
don't-
long it's
we
been that
should-
way?
That's interesting. We really don't have a structure. That for the police has an official spokesperson. And he's very good and he basically handles all those issues. What happens on we have a civic association and a citizens association. The citizens association handles the condo community. The civic association handles the rest of town. That's about 1/3 to 2/3. They both are very eager to learn about what's going on, and so we have basically, as I say, we don't have a structure, but I do a lot for the council. I do a lot of the public communicating for the council on issues, and I have a good relationship with the writers for both of those organizations. And we have our own newspaper, Palm Beach Daily News, which comes out twice a week, off season, every day, on season.
Owned by the town.
No, it's actually a part.
It's like the Ink and M.
Yeah, it's actually a part of one of the big newspaper companies like Knight Ridder or something like that.
And but can you say more about why it is important in Palm Beach to be so wired in with the civic associations, the press, the
Palm Beach
PR?
has 10,000 permanent residents, 35,000 permanent residents. Most of them have run companies. Most of them have done major things in their lives, and they all think they can run the town better than us. So
Right.
we have to
You have to
we
pat them
be
on,
very clear and very transparent with them. There's always logic for what we do. We make good decisions. We've got a good council. That doesn't always happen, but we have a good council right now. The dynamics on the council are important. We have one person who is just a stickler for dotting i's and crossing t's. She's a big pain in the rear, but you need somebody like that on the council. And then you have an environmental activist. And then there are the rest of us who are flaming moderates on the council.
Donna?
Well, do you have, non-voting taxpayers involved?
I say,
Non-voting taxpayers involved, because you have a difference, you have 10,000 permanent residents.
yeah.
35,000.
Who votes
We
in
have a lot
town?
of people who leave during the summer, but have chosen Palm Beach as their permanent residence. Donald Trump is one of them. I'm one of them. I mean, I come up here during the summer, but my official residence is down there. So the number of, how do I put this? We don't have, I know there's a tension here, because I'm on the island. We don't have that down there for some reason. No, we don't, the only tax we have is a property tax in Florida. We don't have an state income tax. We have a property tax. That property tax is big because there's no income tax. And so that's why the property taxes.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, that's really all that Nantucket's revenue. I mean, there are fees and other things, but it's primarily property tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, just so basically, what you're saying is 6 months in a day is what happens in Florida. So maybe the difference is all those folks like you who come up in the summer, but then the population increases in the winter. But you're voters.
Yes, that's right. A lot of people, even though they're not there year round, have selected Palm Beach as their home. We have, as I was saying, we have 32 billionaires living in our town. Or who have a home there. Some of them are permanent, like the Louders, Charles Schwab, and some others are permanent residents. And they certainly care about, what's going on.
Jeff, any info? Jill, anything? No. Well, I'm gonna ask you one question, one last question. I'm curious, how much of a politician are you? You say you've been a town councilor for 8 years. Are you running for office all the time? Do you have office hours for constituents?
Yeah, that's
Is it a full-time job, a part-time job?
I am a politician, but I'm really the only one on the council. I mean, I ran for Congress here in 1984. In the state of Massachusetts against Gary Stubbs. I got 46% of the vote when I ran against him, and I hadn't lived in the community for a while. I wrote the land use legislation as Commissioner of Community Affairs in the state of Massachusetts. I wrote the land use legislation for Martha's Vineyard. We set up the Vineyard Commission and the island-wide review of development for individual properties that exceed certain guidelines and for developments proposed to be located in sensitive areas like wetlands and so forth. So yes, I am by nature a politician, but I am not running.
I guess what
I'm the only one that has, yeah, I understand.
I'm
How it
sort of
affects-
curious about how much time you
I
have to
do have
spend dealing
office
with
hours.
this.
I'm the only one though on
Okay.
the council that has office hours, and that's by choice. And I have breakfasts for my constituents every couple of months. And I try very hard to, let people know what's going on. And even though I'm not voted upon only by the residents of the South End, I'm townwide elected, I take a great deal of care in making sure that the representatives in the South End, where I live, about a third of the town, are well. I used to head up the Citizens Association, so I have good context there, and I use them.
Terrific.
What do you think it would be like if Palm Beach did not have a mayor?
The mayor is important for ceremonial reasons, obviously. And the mayor is important because she, in this case, the one we have now, actually the one before her too, are very good at the diplomacy. And in making sure that our relationship with important state agencies and important state bodies is there. The mayor does vote to break ties. So if we have an issue where someone has recused themselves for one reason or another, and it's 2-2. The mayor can step in and break a tie, and the mayor can veto. If, for example, if a vote is 3-2, the mayor can say, I veto this, and that requires then a supermajority of 4-1. So there has to be someone has to change their vote in response to the mayor's veto in order to get it passed. There are a lot of other, as I say, there are a lot of other things. I'd be happy to come back some other time and be helpful if you think that would be helpful. I realize that you've got a meeting to.
Well,
get through.
I'm sorry I'm giving you the bums rush here a little bit, Lou, but we have to get back onto our agenda.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us and,
I've left you my card.
yeah, I've got your card and we've got some of the example agendas and. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have
Darren.
one question. You're elected townwide at
Yes.
large, but you represent one group.
Really, I
How
don't.
does that governance?
Yeah, I don't. I represent the whole town. It's just a hybrid system. The only reason we have it divided into districts is for convenience in scheduling elections. 3 in year 1, 3 in year 2, and it's a 2-year term. So, I mean, for example, a lot of my relationships in town are with North Enders, and with people who live in the center of town. And the big thing that our meetings are public. So for a town council meeting, we will have probably 40 or 50 people in attendance.
And they can all speak, right?
And they can all speak, and as you can see on there, there's a space. There's a place where people can speak at the beginning.
Mhm.
And then we ask if you're gonna speak on an issue on the agenda, to wait until we discover that, and if any decisions we make, there is an opportunity for citizens to speak, limit 3 minutes, but we're flexible on that.
Correct.
Pretty quick on that, so has there ever been a situation where the residents haven't agreed with the decision of the council?
There have been lots of very controversial meetings because, the issue of development has got to be very controversial on the island of Palm Beach.
And have the residents ever come together to?
The residents have never appealed the decision of it. There's an appeal process, obviously. Actually, I take that back. We do have some appeals. They rarely are successful. But for example, we just finished a 5-hour meeting on development, in Palm Beach on the Paramount Theater. And, everybody got their chance to speak. And it was almost like a formal administrative position. Lawyers spoke on one side, lawyers spoke on the other. Then the general public was asked to speak and they had the opportunity to do that.
Right, but they don't have the whole meeting.
They don't vote, the council votes. That's what we're elected to do. If we don't do a good job, they can throw us out.
Very good. Can we ask if you get paid or don't pay or?
$0. In fact, I don't even get paid $1, which means that I can't deduct my expenses for going from Nantucket to Palm Beach next week. For a meeting that we have scheduled. No, we don't get paid.
Terrific. Lou, thank you so much.
Thank you. If I can be helpful, happy to do that.
No, I really appreciate your time and, we'll be back to you if there's a place on the agenda.
Would show you how we structure our meetings, which I think would be helpful.
Right.
And I've left you my card.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
You can go out that door, so there's another meeting going on.
Oh,
so
yeah, sure.
You'll just walk around the building, but,
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you.
I got a picture of it, so.
All right. Interesting.
Interesting.
Yes, yes, it was.
Anthony and the folks from Collins, sorry about the little longer time that I guess I should have.
I think it was worthwhile, Joe.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Just to get back to our agenda, we don't have any minutes to approve for our last meeting, which was July 24th. I was wondering if I could look at you, Bo. Can I request that you go back and sort of look at the video, and sort of summarize the minutes for that meeting?
The AI guy.
Well, it's the only way to do it at this point. I'll
Should always.
I think he should be the permanent secretary.
I will take it on myself to do the minutes for tonight, so we'll just have to do. Okay. I think we can move back to our friends from the Collins Center. We left 2 weeks ago that we were discussing, the town council, the legislative branch. Can I turn it back over to Anthony and Pat and
Sure.
thread of where we were?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Pat to take us. We're sort of halfway through the article 3. But before I turn it over, I just want to start by just resurfacing a couple of comments or things that we discussed from the last meeting. One was there there was a discussion about the Planning and Economic Development Commission on the island, and just questions around whether the changes would, how that might affect that particular body. So we did take a look at that. The Planning and Economic Development Commission has appointments, the appointment that affects this body is it has an appointment from the county commissioners. I believe we haven't really formalized it yet, but under your current form of government, the county commissioners are the select board. So if the select board becomes a town council, presumably that town council would also be the county commissioners, and that one appointment would just map over from there. So there wouldn't have to be a change necessarily to the special act that creates the Planning and Economic Development Commission. Pat's going to spend a little bit more time, or I know she's going to spend a lot more time talking about this. But there was also the discussion around the non-resident, I'm sorry, the resident.
Not
The
public taxpayers.
Yeah, I could ruin that every time. That group, and I just want to sort of set the stage a little bit for the discussion. And so I'm just going to share my screen so just to sort of set the stage. Currently, this group, everything about their rights at the town meeting is articulated here in section 2.6, which states that they designate one spokesperson for the entire group to speak to the legislative body, which is the town meeting, and then the moderator may or may not recognize that person going forward. Under the council charter, anyone, and Pat's going to get into this a little bit more, but anyone will be able to speak to the town council during the public comment section of those meetings. So I just want to sort of frame that's really the transition from town meeting to town council in terms of speaking to those two different bodies. So it's this paragraph here that would not be there presumably in the next charter, and then there'd be sort of an expanded rights sort of as a base case. And then we put some thought into that, our team, and as the conversation continues, there's places where you can add suggestions in terms of whether or not the community wants to encourage the council or the chief executive, which would be the town manager, to create some sort of advisory commission for any number of underrepresented groups to make sure that their input is included in the policymaking process. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Pat, and you tell me which document you want me to share on the screen.
Thanks, Anthony. If you could share, I think I sent you a slightly edited Article 2. The rest of you can follow along with the last meeting's memo if you have one available. Otherwise, Anthony's putting it up on the screen. I just made small changes to indicate where you've already decided, for example, 9 members at large, staggered. So I wanted to quickly go through some of the things we talked about and try to get through the whole article today. There are some areas we may be saving for other articles for further discussion, but don't worry, we'll get to all the issues. It just might not be in Article 2. So Section 2.1, we're pretty complete with. Section 2.2, I just wanted to quickly mention, there was some conversation last time about B, which says no former member of town council can hold another position, compensated position in the town until 1 year following the date on which their service has terminated. There were some suggestions that should be changed to 6 months, given the limitations of transportation and who lives on the island, and you might need these people for positions. I'm not sure that the committee came to a consensus on that. I know we left it at 1 year and moved on. Just taking a look at the conflict of interest laws, the specific ones with the cooling off period applies to not being permitted to work on the other side against the municipality within a year. In this case, it wouldn't directly conflict in that because you would be working for the same municipality, just in a different position. However, there might be other conflict of interest provisions that are implicated. For example, if as a town council member, you made some decisions that could then affect your position if you take a position within a year. So there may be a case-by-case basis for recusal. So our suggestion with this is that you probably can choose the timing that you want, but then we'll flag that for your town council just to confirm whether that would be okay. What often happens is that as these things go along, people are encouraged to either, disclose any conflict or, write to the state to get a ruling on a conflict of interest. We don't see necessarily, if you want to change that from 1 year to 6 months, that there's any outright conflict, but we'd probably want you to follow up with your town council on that.
Bill?
What if we kept it at 1 year, but we have something that says it could be waived? Either by the town council or the town manager or, or town council or lawyers. I don't know who would waive it, but, if someone's been a counselor for a while and then all of a sudden they want to go and work for the town and run one of the offices, I mean, I just don't really have a problem with that personally. But maybe it's something that the council could decide that they would waive the 1 year rule and it's only 6 months or something like that.
Any other thoughts?
Case by case basis, I think.
I actually think, Jill, that, the kind of an interesting way of working. I mean, say it's a year, but if you run across a situation where you need a waiver, you
Apply for the waiver.
You apply for the waiver, you go to the town council, or you get the town's attorneys to opine on why this is a good situation to change
Yeah, I think if there's a waiver available, that's fine. If you want to keep it at 1 year, if that's in keeping with everybody else, I agree.
Pat, does that seem like,
That
That's
seems great, and we can add that language in if that's what the committee in general, is there's some consensus on that.
It's fine with me.
Works for me. I think I'm getting general sense of support to that idea, Pat.
Great, we'll make a note that will be added, that language in. I think that is language that is used in other charters for various things, so I think that definitely works and can be added in. So I'm going to have Anthony move down to 2.3. Kind of skipped over this last time, so I want to make sure that we make a couple of decisions. In general, I think we talked about that each year, because there are staggered terms, each year the council is brought together and chooses a president and a vice president. And usually the term of office for that is 1 year. That does not preclude that someone can be chosen year after year for a few years if they're interested in being the council president. And so I just, it's pretty standard, but if, you felt strongly that it should be organized some other way, let us know. But I think that is something that doesn't necessarily, unless there's objection, we don't have to have a lot of discussion on that.
I mean,
Sounds good.
it seems sort of practical to me, and I think it's analogous to the way the select board operates right now anyway, so.
Right. And then again, in B, anytime throughout the year, there can be reorganization if a supermajority wants one. Say, for example, somebody wants to step down or has medical issues and they want to have a little less of a load. You can then change that during midterm if that works for you. Now, the language in here, just a few of the 13 council managers have language that allows the council president to also serve as a member of the school committee. So I wanted to bring that up as a discussion point, just to check in with you, whether this is something that works. And I can tell you, out of the 13, North Attleboro has an ex officio member. Watertown and Winthrop have the council president serving as a voting member on the school committee. In Plan E cities such as, Cambridge and Worcester and Lowell, the tradition is a little bit different in that the council manager is called a mayor. And it sounds like Palm Beach works the same way. And they also have additional responsibilities and are considered the head of state and usually additional support. And sometimes they also serve as the chair of the school committee. So that's where this tradition came from. But
Pat?
oh, yes,
So sorry to interrupt, because I don't want anyone to be confused. I think you misspoke and said the council manager. I think you mean the president of the
Oh.
council.
thank you so much. Thanks for interrupting. So the president of the council in what we call kind of a weak mayor council manager positions will also serve on the committee. So most do not have this relationship where the president also serves on the committee. A few do, and I guess we just wanted to get some input from you as to whether you think that is a need. The upside is it's a lot more work for the council president. Rather the downside, the upside is there can be some coordination between the two committees, but it's really up to your personal preference or your town's preference.
If I could, rather than, I'm gonna skip over you, Curtis. Tom, can I call on you? Does the select board have is there a select board representative on the school committee? I just personally don't know.
No, and in my year and almost year and a half and half my term, I haven't had anything come across my desk relating to the schools at all.
So on Nantucket, the school committee, and the school has its own budget that is reviewed and approved by town meeting. There really isn't any administrative or I don't know, other communication between the select board and the school committee?
No, town admin certainly, but not in select board specifically, not that I've had a part on. That doesn't mean that the chair doesn't have some dealings with the town manager and assistant town managers, et cetera, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brown.
My son went to public school in Cambridge where the mayor played a really big role in the school and the community and was an important role model, both the mayor themselves, and also the interest that they took in various things that they advocated for the school. And I saw that was extremely important to pulling together a public high school where there were very wealthy people and also people who were living in subsidized housing and much lower income SES levels. And I really admired that. And listening to Tom's answer there that he hasn't seen anything come across his desk about the school, it seems to me that there absolutely should be oversight or interest, investment in, involvement in, not oversight, between the town government and the public school system. That's a strong reaction that I'm having based on my experience. So again, I really like the mayor, the weak mayor model that was just discussed. And I like to think of the council president as being that mayor.
Curtis.
Well, in the context that you vote a president or chair of the board or the council every year, that means you would be rotating that person. So I'm not particularly in favor of it. And the town manager and the school superintendent probably are communicating in a way. I understand Caroline's interest, but I see with the rollover every year in the president of the board, that's not a very practical way. So I'm not in favor.
Any other thoughts, comments on this? Jill? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with Caroline. I very much am in favor of this, and I'll tell you why. I really feel like the school committee and the work of the school actually doesn't even get promoted enough. Partially because it's not appearing before the select board enough. They do come before the board and, they go over their budget, but I mean, like Tom said, there's really no interaction. And we need to, these town council members and the select board members do, I can vouch for them. They fly at 30,000 feet and we want them to. And so they know things that are happening that, in the school, I think often is operating in isolation. We're a very small place geographically. And I think with all the things going on between affordable housing, land development, land bank, I think it's better for things to be coming together. And I really feel strongly that one of these town council members should be on the board. I don't really care if it's the president, but I think somebody should be on that committee. And if I don't know, again, I don't know how you could stagger that with the way their terms are, but I think it'd be really helpful to the school committee and to the select board. I mean, the school is kind of running out of land. The school wants to have more fields. The school needs housing for teachers. Like all those things are the same issues that the town is addressing. And it would be great if there was more coordination, I think.
Yeah.
I would agree on the coordination, so maybe I'll withdraw my resistance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess personally, I don't feel terribly strongly either way. Other than, I've tended to, when we get some of these issues, anything that takes us off the, let's try to keep it all as similar to the current structure as possible. This would be something different that some people may latch onto. But I could certainly see, the town council, yet when it elects its president and vice president, it has to elect or appoint a representative to the school committee.
Maybe the vice president should be the school.
Or maybe it could be anybody. I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
Joe Blow ends up being the
I agree
representative.
the coordination is a good idea with the two people.
Joe,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just, I believe the way it works today in Nantucket is there is a school committee that is separate from the select board.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I have sat, as you have, on the finance committee, and the school superintendent comes for a drive-by of 1 hour at 45,000 feet of the finances. And I would think it would be better if the new proposed government here had control over 1/3 of the spending that goes to the school budget, as opposed to it's then in a completely different governance sector. And so I think it just seems to me that the way it presently works, governance is removed from the select board. And I think for a lot of good reasons, including Jill's collaboration concept, it should be under the direct purview of the town council. My perspective.
I think, I agree, the coordination, I think, is a very good idea, but I think, our charge is to move forward with town council. If we start changing, amending other commissions, I just think we have to be careful about that. So we don't go into, HDC and FinCom and so forth and so on. So maybe do, commissions, advisory committees, something like that. But I think it's a good idea to do it. I just don't know. We should put it all together.
It seems to me like the budget process is gonna change regardless with a new form. And wouldn't the school have to come before?
So the town
It's a
council,
little bit different than the big.
yeah, I mean, I think the school committee, or however or school administration is gonna have to come before the town council, since there isn't gonna be a town meeting to go have their budget approved. They're gonna have to get it approved by the town council. So, anyway, I would more conversation on this than I would have thought, but I would propose, see if the committee is comfortable with this. Why don't we propose that the council, elect a representative to the school committee each year when it elects its officers, and can be the same person every year. I mean, if there's someone who's consistently on the town council, keeps getting elected, that person presumably will be an expert in school issues and can, be the liaison between the two bodies. So that would be my suggestion, and, see if we can live with that.
I could,
Anybody?
I could live with that.
I don't think we need a vote, but everybody's nodding. Okay.
Can
Is that-
Can I
you got
just
that?
clarify? I got that. I just want to clarify a few things. So, you're talking about, having not necessarily the council president, but a representative from town council. And are you talking about having them being a voting member of the school committee or being a liaison or ex officio non-voting member?
Again, I'm jumping in here. I would, the latter, I would not be saying, I would not suggest that we make them a voting member of the school committee. I would say it's a
Liaison.
liaison. Yeah, I mean, one of the town councilors, not just a representative, but one of the councilors, should be the liaison to the school committee.
Okay, who attends the meetings?
But Tom, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I guess I would say that, I don't want to get back into the macro picture, but it all depends on who the representation is and what their duties are and how much time and all this stuff. I guess on this specifically, my gut tells me that we should leave this as a placeholder in yellow or italics or something like that. And maybe Joe can speak to the chair of the school committee on like how that would functionally work, if not the town manager. But I agree with you, Joe, that the latter of those options seems like the better, instead of getting into a voting member.
Yeah, I don't want to make the town councilor's job bigger or put a bigger load on them, but at the same time, I'm buying some of the argument from other members of the committee that having a more formalized communication and connection between the school committee and the town council makes some sense. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort of split that difference a little bit.
Agree.
Sorry, Carol.
I want to assert that the ideas that I have about it, I'm not so concerned about loading the town councilors. I'm more concerned that this is an opportunity to infuse now I'm talking public school, which is an extremely important asset to the island, with role modeling, investment, energy, and that might come with a voting member. And it also, I actually think it would be great for it to be the president of the council on purpose. Somebody who is able to and is expected to take special interest in the school. Right now, this school, as I understand it, some of you may know more than I do, but there is an inordinate proportion of students who find it necessary, the families find it necessary to go to boarding school off island. And that's making a polarization in the school. And I think that we should become more interested in that and how that's going to affect, our community in the future. So by involving somebody like the head, the president, and marrying the two, joining the two, coordinating, collaborating, I think it could really bring some important positive energy to the school system.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I agree with Tom. I just.
Placeholder.
Okay, but I made myself a note. I will take it on myself to have a chat with the chair of the school committee and see if I can get some impressions from, I don't even know who the individual is at the moment, but explain what we're doing in terms of town council and see what their reaction is. Or I'll report back on that. Okay.
Great, sounds good.
Anthony?
Oh, sorry.
Nope.
Anthony, you got your hand up?
Yeah, this is just more housekeeping. Pat, maybe you have it, but was the term 1 year? Did you guys decide on a term for this liaison role? I don't have a term in my notes.
I
Yeah,
would, it would have to be 1 year because you're changing counselors every.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, it's the same thing for select board. We elect all, or we delegate all our committee work every year.
Okay,
Just an FYI, I know you mentioned the Cambridge role, and in that role, counselors are elected every 2 years because they're able to use the November cycle and they go on odd years. So when the council president, is part of the school committee, they're on it for 2 years at a time. But in this case, where you're doing staggered terms every 3-year terms, 1 year would be the most logical choice.
okay, great.
Okay, let's move on. Since we're putting a pin in this issue, the next highlighted area I had was G, which was just, the vice president performs the duties of the president during the president's absence, on the town council. Except that the vice president shall not perform the duties of the council president in the president's role as member of the school committee, or in this case, as liaison, because what you don't want is for someone different to be going to the school committee every year. So that's why that is different and doesn't have a backup. But I think that the rest is pretty much boilerplate, which I'll quickly note to you. The town council appoints the council clerk. This is different than the town clerk, but the clerk, because of the role of town council, as a legislative body, there's usually appointment of a clerk specific to the town council. And they do the notice, maintain the meetings. It's somewhat of an administrative role, which is different than the town clerk's role with elections and other matters. Vacancies in town council president or vice president position are filled at the next regular council meeting after the vacancy, for the remainder of the original 1-term year of office. It's just to have the vacancy succession right in there. But those are all the decisions you would have to make on section 2.3. Section 2.4, we already talked about compensation. The language is the same. When we do our transition section, we can talk more about what you want to do to appoint the first compensation for town council members, but you don't need to do that in section 2. Section 2.5, council procedures. We had talked about this section. Anthony, if you get a chance to put 2.5 up, that would be great. 2.5 is where we discussed that all meetings of the council shall be open to the public.
Pat, are you not seeing it? I have it scrolled up.
Oh, you do?
Let me do something.
It's there.
No,
We got it.
We can see.
Oh,
it.
okay, that's fantastic.
we could. Anthony just took it down, but that was bad.
Now I see it. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. So, as far as council procedures, we talked a bit about section C. And what I did to resolve it at this point, we noted all meetings of council shall be open to the public. Residents shall have a reasonable opportunity to speak at any such meeting, except as otherwise provided by general law. And the next line is what I think threw people off a little bit. The non-resident employees and other interested parties may be allowed to speak at the discretion of the council. So, 2 things. Residents does not say registered voters. So it's an open term for all residents to speak, and it does not necessarily distinguish between voting, non-voting, part-time, full-time. So people who live here for all or part of the year have an opportunity to speak. We took the next sentence out, thinking that this is something that town council can develop rules on when other interested parties speak, knowing that practically speaking, anytime someone has an interest, it's usually something the town council is going to want to hear. Another thing that we could do here instead is just say, other interested parties may be allowed to speak at the discretion of the council. I would hesitate to just say anyone has a right to speak to the council, because you just may get into issues of giving them a right in the charter that can be disputed if someone's not allowed to speak for various reasons.
Pat, hang on a second. Curtis, your comment?
I think this is critical because in our presentations, and in particular in my presentations, say to Sconset Civic, I said to them, you are non-resident, non-voters, but you can come and speak. Anyone can speak. And I also said that the underserved people, the residents who are not voters, green card people, can come and speak. So as far as I'm concerned, you have to keep the ability for anyone to come and speak to the town council like I did in Barnstable. I walked in there, I signed in, and they let me speak. I don't think you should restrict that at all.
I would agree.
But
Mr. Chair.
it seems to me, Pat, that your language permits that, right? I mean,
No, she just said, they'd be allowed to speak at the discretion of the council. They have a right, they should have a right. That has got to be fundamental to what we're doing here.
Okay.
Perfect.
So it just depends on whether you mean residents, this broad definition of anyone who,
Summer residents, non-voting taxpayers have the right to speak.
Chris, I think that's what it says.
Doesn't really, it's not explicit, that's the problem.
You have people live here for whatever category they fall in, and then you have people who may. own
Okay, if
business.
you're in agreement with what I just said, I don't care how you word it, but you can't say that a summer resident can't go in there and speak. Or a green card person can't go in there and speak.
okay, hang on a second. So,
A point of clarification, non-resident employees, what do you mean by that?
that comes from another, so I took it out because it's confusing. So, a non-resident employee, it's less, when you live on an island, you have fewer of them. But for example, if wages and compensation are up for discussion and somebody wants to speak, but they're an employee, but they're not a resident. That was included in there from another charter for that reasoning. So we took that out because I thought that it would just help clarify things. Anthony, do you have a suggestion for how we can respond to their concerns to make sure it's clear?
So I mean, this is a change so we did change it from the last meeting. I think at this point, what may be causing concern is perhaps to replace residents with attendees of the meeting. Or members of the public shall have a reasonable opportunity to speak.
why don't we just say island residents? I mean, and
Summer, what's a summer resident?
Mr. Chair.
yeah, Tom.
So, there's been evolving case law in this area, which I'm sure all the UMass folks know about, but and things have been changed, and the public has very much a First Amendment right to speak. And I agree with Pat's suggestion here on the other interested parties. I think that covers all bases. At Select Board, as we've mentioned several times, anybody has the ability to come speak. In the Vineyard Wind turbine thing that we've taken nearly 7 hours of public comment in 2 meetings, in the last 2 meetings. We had folks from the Cape come, we had folks from Oregon speak from, different. So I think that Pat's suggestion covers all bases. And I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Pat, but I think what you were thinking of is the other interested parties would be like, oh, well, if an interest group or something wanted to come speak and make a presentation, that they should probably get that okayed by the chair, or something like that. It doesn't seem like this has anything to do with residents, non-residents, individuals who want to come to speak, because in SJC case law and First Amendment case law, the public has a broad latitude in First Amendment privileges in that. So anyway, just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
I mean, I think the simple fix is just what Anthony said is if you replace the word residents with the public shall have a reasonable opportunity, leave the red line section out. And it still allows the council to make rules and regulations about public comment, so they can set time limits, content restriction, whatever they need to, but then anyone can come and talk, and it's super clear and simple.
As long as we do it, that's okay.
I mean, it's not saying that the council
I-
has to listen to 30 minutes of everyone talk.
I'm a little squirrely with the term, the public, but. I mean, if what Tom says is, you know, if somebody from Oregon shows up at the town council meeting and, you know, signs in and says, well, I want to talk about subject X that's before the town council tonight. If the select board would let that person speak, I can't imagine why we would want our town council to not let that person speak, so.
The chair can always stop them.
3 minutes is the limit on virtually every place for speaking.
Well, it's 3 minutes, but it can be anything that the chair decides as long as it's applied equally. So 3 minutes is a good balance, in my opinion, but it could be 10 minutes, but you can't give somebody 10 minutes and then give the next person 4 minutes. That is in violation of the law. Or the recent court cases.
So as a practical matter, you have to be strict on the 3 minutes, otherwise you get yourself into a tight.
Lots of enforcement. Yep. But again, this should come from John Giorgio or Lauren Goldberg, not me.
Right, well, they're gonna have to review all this anyway, so, I don't know, where are we? I'm, you know, the public, residents.
Attendees,
I think Pat's suggestion of just cutting off non-resident employees and the word and other interested parties may be allowed to speak at the discretion of the council makes perfect sense.
So residents and other interested parties is the way it would read.
You have two buckets. You have the defined bucket who can speak, and the other part of the public that's not defined when the council chairman says they can speak. But you don't want to have this thing be held hostage by people who don't really have a local interest.
So just to clarify, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak.
No, I'm confused, so I'm not quite sure what the wording ought to be. So Pat, if you've got a solution or.
I mean, the solution is whatever you want to have it, but I think what Tom is saying, there's 2 sentences here. And the first sentence, he suggested residents have a reasonable opportunity, and residents is the broad connotation of residents, to speak at any such meeting. And then the next line, just take off non-resident employees to make it clear, other interested parties may be allowed to speak at the discretion. That was what Tom was saying, 2 different standards, one standard for the broad category of residents and a different one for other interested parties. However, you know, Anthony's suggestion is also to say, you know, the public shall have a reasonable opportunity to speak and leave it at that. But then there is, and there can be time, place, and manner restrictions on that speech. But then on the other hand, it's also opening it up for kind of a right to speak on a particular matter. So, you know, you can make the choice. The other thing is we can make a preliminary decision and then run it by your town council.
that's exactly. I would say other interested parties is a good way to, as a placeholder, and then let town council, when they look at it, tune it.
All right, so then it's, so the sentence will roughly read, residents shall have a reasonable opportunity to speak at such meeting, except otherwise provided blah, blah, blah. And then the next sentence would be, other interested parties may be allowed to speak at the discretion of the council.
There you go.
Okay.
That's a good placeholder.
I'm sorry, Beth. Oh, I didn't mean this. So,
Have you ever heard of meeting bombing? Like activists, like hold meetings hostage? I mean, it's an extreme case and we don't have any of those, but I mean, it could happen where you get people who are constantly just crazy stuff. I don't see that happening, but
Well, I think the discretion holds.
yes, exactly. So
I mean, we're basically giving, I think what we're doing is we're giving residents, all residents of any particular subset or subgroup, shall have the right to speak. And other interested parties, which could be anybody else.
Well, like
have
the Cape
discretion.
Cod group that came on the new one.
Why don't we say all residents? Because that's inclusive,
I'm fine
instead
with
of
that.
just residents.
that's what you mean, the homesick residents.
Yeah, I can live with all residents.
Residents, it's a little more specific.
Okay. I think we've beaten this one up.
Do something with it.
Okay,
Okay, Pat.
we've got that, and we'll put in a placeholder for review. E is just talking about, taking minutes, having up-to-date, accounting of the procedures, and then, making minutes available, after the meeting. It's putting it in the charter. I know that and it's giving a time limit. I know that sometimes it's especially important for transparency for town council to be fairly prompt and turning around the minutes. And it gives you until the next business day after the next regularly scheduled meeting, meaning you can vote on the minutes at the next meeting. And then they have to be posted. If you want to take out the requirement for a time limit of posting, that's great, but you definitely should have something in there talking about an up-to-date accounting of the proceedings of the council. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Sure. Yeah.
Giving them until the day after the next meeting to post their accounting of the meeting. Okay, great. Let's move on to 2.6. And we went through this last time to some extent, but I'll just breeze through it. A lot of this is very standard. It talks about how general, corporate, legislative, and appropriation powers are vested in the council. The council enacts bylaws, and just for your information, when we use the word bylaw, technically, this would be a city form of government, and technically it would be an ordinance, but communities have and we're operating on the assumption of still calling Nantucket a town and still using the word bylaw. It's the language that's used, but it has the legal effect of an ordinance. So it also talks about the council has the right to appoint a town manager, as provided in Article 3. Individuals who serve as representative or delegates of the town to governing, to regional district authorities and other committees. We are going to go more into any other additional, there's another placeholder here. If we'll talk about the appointment versus election of members of boards, as well as if they are appointed, who appoints a little bit further down, so that we don't get bogged down in that and we can, move through this. In general, the council is the licensing authority of the town, much like the select board is now, and authorized under, they issue licenses, make rules and regulations regarding licenses, etc. And E, the council shall conduct an annual review of the town manager's job performance in accordance with Article 3. A summary of the review is made available to the public. We're finding more and more often that charters definitely want to include this public job performance summary in order to have accountability for the town manager. And it certainly, it's a factor in the balance of, of power. Okay, I'm going to switch down to town bylaws. These are procedural ways. This is procedural basically. If you've had a chance to read it, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I wanted to just discuss the process and see if you feel that this is reasonable. It's pretty standard. Bylaws are on one subject only, and introduced in writing in the form necessary. It talks about posting on the town bulletin board and on the town's website or any official repository of information, or as otherwise required. Some specific bylaws may require certain postings. And it talks about making the bylaw clear and that the bylaw should be read at 2 separate meetings before passage, except in the case of an emergency. It defines what an emergency is, and it discusses that emergency bylaws are repealed at the end of 90 days unless otherwise adopted in conformity with this section. So it gives an automatic expiration of emergency bylaws in order to preserve the definition of emergency. It talks about an affirmative vote requires a majority of the full council membership, except as otherwise provided, to be necessary for the final passage of any bylaw. Notwithstanding, a supermajority might be necessary for certain bylaws, under the general laws.
Pat,
Yes.
quick question on that, the supermajority term. You know, I've always understood here on Nantucket that zoning bylaw changes require a 2/3 vote at town meeting. Is that the same thing as a supermajority, or is there either an arithmetic or legal difference?
There's supermajority effectively means 2/3. And this is something that, you know, while I agree with your interpretation, I would always leave town council to be the final review and decider of whether this is appropriate terminology. Because there's a lot of case law on it, and this is something that probably would be flagged by town council just to make sure that it's correct. This is general language that's used in several charters, but, you know, as you know, the case law changes over time. And so, you know, that's something that your town council will check out and confirm.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay. It states that other matters requiring, for example, anything that abolishes a town department, office, agency, et cetera, requires a passage of a bylaw. So basically, it's setting out some things like fines and penalties that must be changed by a bylaw rather than by, you know, individual, either by the town manager or by an individual member of the council making a decision. Okay. So this is procedural, and I would definitely, you know, town council is going to take a close look at it, but it's fairly standard and it's something that's in other charters. Okay, 2.8 is vacancy. This discusses that if there's a vacancy on town council, the president of the council calls a special meeting within 30 days to fill the vacancy. And the person elected to fill the vacancy serves until the next regular town election. Where you have an election every year, you may choose not to, you know, most choose not to hold a special election to fill a vacancy, but to fill them. However, no vacancy shall be filled if a regular town election is to be held within 120 days. So if you have a town election coming up, you need not fill that. So, I mean, it's fairly standard, but, you know, just checking in with you that it's, you know, appropriate. You think it's appropriate for the town council to fill those positions until the next regular election, or hold it open if the next regular election is within 120 days.
Okay.
Well, I just think we should talk about that because
Mhm.
I just want to play that out a little bit. What would that look like? How does it compare to what it's like now?
I don't really know what happens if a select board member were to retire or, you know, all of a sudden disappear. You know, I don't think I don't know. Tom, do you know, if one of you, one of the members of the select board vanished, do you have a special election? Do they, do the remaining select board members appoint a temporary substitute, or?
No, they don't appoint it. What I remember, what happens when what happened when Melissa resigned is there was a gap And then that was filled in the next reasonable slot, which was 6 months. Malcolm was elected and then served for 6 months and then was reelected in the same election that I was elected to for a full 3-year term. So I don't think the charter, et cetera, lays out any exact period. But when there's a resignation, I remember there were 4 select board members. And then when Malcolm was elected, he was then on for 6 months.
But he was elected by a special public election, not
Correct.
but yeah, okay.
But that was at like, the state election or something in September. Actually, it would have to be because it's 6 months. So yeah.
Okay.
Whereas what's being proposed here, Pat, how does this work? Where would the person be chosen from and who would be choosing?
The select councilors.
The council would choose a replacement. In this case, there will be a regular election once a year. So, the council would choose someone to fill out that rest of that year's term, unless there's an election to be held within 120 days, in which case that position would just be left open until the next 120 days.
But how would the counselors choose the person?
The counselors could make those can develop a policy on choosing that person, whether it's somebody who had run for election in the past. Some may choose, who's next in order of who ran for the election in the last year. The alternative is to say, is to call a special election. And that certainly can be your choice. Some towns just feel it's not worth the expense, but others might. So it's really up to your committee, which way you would want to have that done.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
maybe if you could talk to Nancy and ask her what the easiest for her would be. You're probably thinking that already, but
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm personally not that, concerned about having, if we have a 9-member town council and one of them dies, and you have 8, having those 8 people in their best judgment hire a substitute, appoint a substitute for, and it's only going to occur in situations where there's more than 4 months till the next election. So you get appointed, you serve 5 months or 7 months or 9 months, and then you have to. Then there's another election.
That's what it looks like our charter says now, but there's nothing that's up for 3 days. It says
Oh,
they can
or
appoint
the current
somebody.
charter.
Yeah. So if we were keeping in mind with that.
Well, what about the alternative of just, since we now would have 9 counselors, why not, is it possible just to not fill it and just wait until the election? Is there any downside in doing that, Pat?
The downside is that you would then have an even number of counselors and not be able to make decisions.
Thanks.
But which is why, there's that 120 day, if you want to leave it open for 120 days before an election, it's less risky that you're going to run into deadlock.
I mean, when you think of it, you're already vesting these 9 counselors with a pretty large amount of authority. And in the somewhat unusual case where one of them dies or disappears, goes down on the ferry, you're trusting the other 8 to make a reasonable judgment to have a temporary substitute. And then you're gonna, the next election comes up and either that person's gonna run and keep the seat or somebody else will step up and win it. I just don't see it as that putting us into I think it's a reasonable solution to a foreseeable problem.
I'm not thinking so much of the distrust in the counselors who they would choose amongst, but just who is going to be available, ready, and wanting to be named. Pat, you said it would maybe be from the group who last ran, who didn't get elected.
It
most
could
likely.
also, yes, it could also be someone who's retired from the select board, who did not want to run again. There's a pool of people who have been on the select board and no longer are on. There's a pool of, it could be someone else on another board and committee in town. So, because it's for a temporary term and it's just to fill out a 1-year term, there may be a sufficient pool to choose from, especially if the person doesn't have to go through the rigors of campaigning for an election that would fill out a term that would be for, less than a year.
And they could just follow the committee appointment process that we have, where people just apply, and then the council.
I like
feel
the
is gonna best.
retired, the idea of a retired or former
I
person.
just don't see it as that big a problem.
No.
There will be people available to appoint to fill the the temporary opening.
Yeah, let's move on.
I would say leave it as is.
Jill.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jill.
I don't know that I think that they do need to fill that position. I mean, it seems like if we have some sort of election that year, they can do it and they can wait. I mean, we don't have a town meeting that we're gearing up towards in May anymore. And if you ask that council to appoint someone, it looks like they're endorsing the next person who might run. And I don't think that's a good idea. And that might just be because that person is the only one available. I mean, it kind of puts more pressure on them as picking one of their own. I think that looks like collusion. So I would leave it open.
That would be my vote.
Mr. Chair, the
Yeah.
one downside would be is that the counselors all have committee duties, and then another counselor would have to double up on some of that stuff because it will be important being the executive and the legislative at that point. But
I
can
mean,
kinda
I
see
also
both.
I don't think you want to leave. I mean, this is a council that meets continuously, that votes on issues continuously. I don't think you want to leave it with an 8-person
No.
even number. You run into the problem of a tie, and I just think this position needs to be filled, and it's just as a practical, again, I'm sorry, Jill, I'm not sure I buy it, but I don't know.
I think this place is small, and I think that looks bad if the council is appointing someone. If you're gonna do it, I like Jeff's idea of them having people apply, and then I guess they could do it based on that, on who applies, but
They're still gonna elect.
I know,
Well-
I don't know. I think a 9-person board's pretty big, like you're saying.
What if we just filled it with the people who ran last, the next person who got the, smaller amount of votes in the last election?
But
I mean, I'm sure they would be approached by the town manager to apply or something, but
Maybe you could just do it automatic, that would just be automatic.
But that's flying in the face of the democracy of, well, they didn't get elected, and now because somebody, for whatever reason, I mean, isn't in this position anymore.
I mean, they got votes, so technically, they campaigned, they ran, they got votes. They just didn't get as many as the person who was. And that
Well-
way it just feels automatic.
I think that we're spending time on this right now because it represents the transition between open town meeting and representative town councilors, and there's a difference, like right now, a lot of the energy of who participates is volunteerism and who has interest. And that system, it would be transitioning over to something that has more to do with, it is gonna become more political. And I think we should take it seriously.
maybe is there a way to do it where you can say that if the person leaves the job, at a certain point, so let's say they leave the job and it is April and the election is in May, or they want to leave in February, and the election is May. I mean, maybe you don't appoint at a certain, maybe there's a time limit there.
Well, there is.
Oh, it's
There's
with
4
60
months. I
days?
mean, that's in the language, Jill.
Oh, there, you are saying to do that in 4 months. Okay.
It says you don't fill the position unless if there's less than 4 months to the next election. So you would.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anthony, your hand's been raised, sorry.
Well, no, if you resolved it, then I was just gonna
Oh.
lay out some options that the committee could take, but if it's resolved, I'll hold.
It's resolved.
Moving on.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Great. The next couple of provisions, access to information, talks about the ways where town council can make inquiries into the town. The town council can require town officials to come before it. That gives it a process to, provide specific information and giving them notice when they're going to have them called before the council. I'm going to start backwards here and start with 210, which talks about prohibitions. In general, in order to maintain the separateness of the executive and legislative branches, charters contain provisions like 210, which say that the town council and members of the town council cannot give orders or directions either publicly or privately to employees of the town who is not appointed by the town council. So we're not talking about the town council's clerk, etc. We're talking about a situation where a town councilor would call up DPW and say, hey, plow my road first. So because of this general prohibition against town council giving direct feedback to employees instead of going through the town manager and saying, I have this issue, going to the town manager and the town manager solves it. What we've done in section 2.9 is most charters create a procedure by which the town council can bring people and department members in to ask them questions. And that's the procedure in section 2.9. It's a fairly standard procedure, so I'll just ask if anyone has any questions about it.
Well, shouldn't 210 go ahead of 2.9 then?
It could, it doesn't in most charters, but we can certainly change the order.
If you're saying don't mess, then say don't mess.
As long as it's there.
Yep.
All right,
we can-
no matter, no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, so 210 basically says that members of the town council, as you say, can't call up the head of the DPW, but they could call up the town manager and say, plow my driveway first. I'm not saying that sort of thing happens, but just in case.
They could say a resident called me as town councilor and said there are potholes on my road. So I'm giving you this information for you to deal with in however you want your department heads to deal with it, rather than, calling over the guys in the truck as they're putting, as they're fixing the roads and saying, oh, come over here and do this road.
So it's
yeah.
basically say you have to follow the chain of command, that, you have to pass information on about the potholes to the town manager and let him or her do whatever the heck they do.
Yes, and it's probably exactly the way the select board would operate in the same, in the same situation. But yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So yes, it's exactly the same way. If I have a meeting with a town department head or any communication with staff, I either clear it with Libby first or I CC her on communications. It is very frowned upon, and also it's select board members because of the chain of command to do that. And I don't mean like, oh, well, plow my neighbor's driveway first or something like that, but I mean anything. And we all adhere to that.
Okay, that is very true.
Okay, so so you've now have all been through section 2, the legislative section. So you can congratulate yourself on that. And we have a couple of points that we are saving till later, which we'll reference, and we'll update this with your input from today as well. And I'll let Anthony talk about introducing the next thing that we're going to talk about.
Hang on a second, Anthony. Donna, you had a question?
Yes, sort of point of information, we had, thought about asking the Collins Institute to, research, how or if non-voting taxpayers in other, if you will, seasonal communities, how they're involved. And I wondered if, I know it was presented at the last
It was, and Anthony and Caroline and Jeff and I did chat about this at our sort of post-meeting debrief. As I remember, you know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Pat or Anthony, there are no towns that have, you know, in Massachusetts that have specific defined formal roles for, you know, non-resident, non-voting taxpayers. I mean, it's, as I don't know if I'm saying that right, Anthony, but I thought that was kind of how we discussed it and left it. It's
Sort of across the country, though, not just.
well,
Because there's Palm Springs, there's so many, there's Palm Beach, there's so many places that have situations like we have. And I was just, point of information, wanted to know if any other communities such as ours across the country addressed this. And to see if there was some sort of involvement.
Anthony, yeah.
Joe, yeah, I would just add a little bit more subtle. You correctly sort of summed it up. I'll just sort of add a little bit there. So we can go back and we can look at, take a broader scope. I don't think we'll get every city in the, you know, municipality in the country, but we can definitely look for examples around. We did look in Massachusetts, and I think what we found is the big distinction is really between towns, and towns that, you know, broad definition is communities that have town meetings, and cities, communities where legislative decisions are made by a council. And in towns, there are provisions that provide rights to resident non-voters, very similar to what is existing in Nantucket's current charter. There are not such provisions in council forms of government, precisely because, as was discussed earlier, everybody has a right to address the legislative body. So under a council form, you would have the sort of leeway to communicate to the body in the way any other resident or any other taxpayer would. There would not necessarily be that distinction. Again, with variety around the council's rules that they create, and that's outside the charter. And then there's another piece which we discussed, which we could discuss further, which is, and again, we're talking about there are distinctions between the charter and between ordinances and just policies adopted by the community, which can be modified more frequently, around putting suggestions and the recommendations that would come out of the report from this committee around suggesting to the city, to the town council or to the town manager, that once the new form of government is adopted, that they formulate some sort of body to include a representative, however they choose it, of the tax-paying non-voters, to give them regular advice as they go forward, but sort of outside of the charter, but a recommendation so that they continue to receive this policy input. And one of the reasons we structured it like that was because when we talked about it, there could be any number of groups that feel excluded from decision-making. I think someone on the call talked about people who work there but are not necessarily citizens of the United States, or any number of cases. So that was sort of the suggestion that we came to sort of address that concern. But we can definitely take a broader scope before our next meeting.
I would appreciate that. Chair.
So
I want to comment on that, because I watched last meeting. And, you know, we started this meeting out. The Collins Center was showing us the ways that participation by non-taxpaying residents is improved. It's going to be upgraded. Currently, they're not allowed into town meeting. And in this new form, when you can participate via public comment, they can already do that, obviously. But I want to remind everybody that we have to take this through town meeting. And the voters here are very weary of participation in terms of residents. Okay, we have a lot to protect, like school systems. Right, I understand that people don't use a lot of services as non-resident or non-resident taxpayers, but you have to get this through town meeting. Okay, so there's a number of concessions we have to make in order for us to do that. That issue is a non-starter. Okay, it's going to torpedo this effort if we allow that.
If,
Huh?
if we, just to clarify, if we allow like what Anthony was suggesting, like the town council to put together maybe an ordinance or something. You think? I mean, number one, it's very important. I'm an advocate for town council, no question about it, and so is the committee, the non-voting taxpayers. So this is very important. And certainly we wouldn't want something to create a distraction. But at the same time, this is an opportunity within this committee to bring the importance of our group. But number one, yes, it's important to pass this, and we don't want anything to be in construction. I don't like the idea of the ordinance.
Well,
Caroline?
I'm recognizing, Donna, that the reason that the non-voting taxpayers are such proponents of the town council is because they do already recognize that they will be more represented and that they can speak regularly, just as every other resident can. And so your support of it, representing that group on this committee, is representing that difference. So I think, Bo, that's what you're saying, that there already will be a recognition and a difference, and that improvement stands. And then from there forward, we have to pay attention to how we are going to get the voters to pass this. And that's it, and we have to keep focused on that.
We have it covered now nicely by saying there's access to create a separate corporate structure that adds Bo's right. Let's go with what we got and get it through town meeting.
Well, I think we should clarify that, at least the way I recall our conversation with Anthony and Pat, a week ago Monday, was not adding anything into the charter, not specifically defining, you know, a committee of not for the, you know, it's really a recommendation to the future new town council
Yes.
that they should think seriously about how they get input on from non-voting taxpayers, from non-citizen residents. I mean, there are various groups who are residents and part of the economy and the culture here on the island who the town council should listen to. But I'm not personally in favor of adding something into what we're creating here in the charter, in part for exactly what Bo's talking about. I don't want to create a speed bump that's going to create a problem in town meeting.
I'm in full agreement.
Plus, I don't particularly agree with it, so.
I mean, I think it's in, right, is the council, and we'll get to it in a later section, but they can create any kind of committee of any kind of group that they want, so they can form. Again, they can reform the committee for non-voting taxpayers and interact with them however they choose. They can have a committee for, I'll try to get this right, for resident, non-voter, non-taxpayers. They could do that too, right? And they're gonna have to engage with the community, but that's up to the council to figure out how to do. I think just the fact that we've already covered that there's a large swath of people that are non-resident taxpayers, resident non-taxpayers that are now getting access to the legislative branch of government that they didn't have before is an incredible boon to everybody.
Yes.
Because right now, the only people that have access to the legislative branch of government realistically are registered voters. And the fact that everyone's getting access to that is, in my opinion, pretty extraordinary
Unbelievably open.
and helpful. I mean,
We're
that,
good.
Mr. Chair.
We're good. Okay.
And my clarification on that, because like non-resident taxpayers, not is that right? Like, they're allowed in the town meetings. So what are they getting with the town council that they're not getting Because they can speak to the select board.
They can't speak at town
They
meeting.
can't
at
go
town
through the
meeting.
door.
Yeah, but you
And
can't
so
speak.
a moderator to let them speak.
You
Right.
have to make an appointment, right, like with Sarah Elder, right, in order to speak, right, or present.
Right.
Right.
Which you would do.
And there's one person designated, Kathy Baird is the representative allowed to go to town meeting
Right.
for the
But you're
nominee,
able to speak every week at the town council, at the.
select board.
Right.
They're not the legislature.
Pardon? Right.
Select board is not the legislature.
Right, but I'm just saying that their voice is being heard.
I spoke at the, select board.
Okay, are we okay on that one? Okay. I'm not sure where it goes back, Anthony or Pat, we'll get back to you, or
Pat, I thought
I
you.
lost track of where, I'm a little
I
lost.
think
track
we're
of
on
where.
5.
Well, we finished the legislative section. We're gonna go back, we're gonna make the edits that based on the conversation from the committee and bring them back for the next meeting. Based on the timeline, the work plan that we set out, our next meeting would be about elected officials, other elected officials other than the council. So we would, if the committee wants, we'd sort of do a little preview of that in the next 10 minutes, if the body is so inclined.
We good? Yeah. Everybody can stay seated for 10 more minutes. Fire away.
Jeff's gonna flip this pen.
I'm a fidgeter. I just always have been, always will be.
It's okay.
Spinning pens, flipping pens.
Yeah.
So this will be, I'm just sharing my screen. We'll do this very quickly because we don't have time to really dig into the meat of this.
We got enough today.
But just a little preview. So obviously at the next meeting, we're gonna you get that sort of look at, I'm gonna say last look, but you can go back to things as much as you want. So you do that last look of the legislative branch. And then we're gonna talk about these other elected positions that are in Nantucket and how to incorporate them into the charter. Some of them will go into different places. So for example, there's the school committee, that's the third one listed on this list. It doesn't currently exist in your current charter, but there's a dedicated section for number 4. Are you guys hearing any background noise from my?
No,
No, you sound great.
All right.
Okay. So I'll just quickly sort of talk about, so moderator is referenced, is in your existing charter. So is the clerk on here? I thought we put the clerk on here to select board. Well, there also is the elected town clerk, which is also an elected position that's existing in your charter. These other positions like the Historic Commission, the Land Bank, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Commission, some of these are by special act. But again, these are a variety of elected positions that are in the town, and you'd want to incorporate them in some form or fashion into the next charter. You could, and I'm just putting out the options here, as communities go through this process, sometimes, and we've kind of done this, so we could bring this information to you. We looked at what how competitive these various positions are. So is the same person being elected to the seat every time? Are there a number of people vying for this seat? If there aren't, maybe that is a type of seat that we don't need to continue to have being elected. So that's a conversation some committees have. I know that the primary thrust of this committee has been to keep as much the same as possible. So it would be more of a procedure of sort of mapping these over to their appropriate sections in the new charter. There will be a little bit more research, particularly on the school committee side. You don't have that in your charter. We've got sort of example language, but similar to the discussion that we just had about the council president or just a member of the council going to the school committee. You have a lot of sort of options about how you want to sort of formulate. Now, again, the school committee is heavily regulated by state law, but there's some flexibility to making it Nantucket centric. So that's the very high level overview about sort of the types of positions that we'd be talking about, the currently elected ones. I'd be sort of remiss in sort of talking about, we're specifically haven't talked about things like sheriff or these other county positions. Your existing county charter talks about how that charter would not affect the historical election of those or the roles of those. So I'm thinking the suggestion would be to sort of map over that, keep that same thing, basically not touch some of those elect county positions, and focus, your thoughts on the town positions. So I'm gonna stop there. Pat, is there anything you wanted to add to that, sort of preview?
The only thing I would add is what we're looking at is kind of a 2 or 3 step process. First, taking a look at your elected positions, deciding if you want to keep them elected, or change them to appointed. And we provided a chart a while back, some factors to consider. Once you've decided what's elected or appointed, if some of these move to appointed, the next question is by whom? Who will be doing the appointing for these positions? Will it be the town manager with the approval of the select board? I mean, excuse me, the approval of town council? How are we going to handle appointed positions? But the first step is going to be looking at your elected positions. I think, yeah, obviously we left the clerk off of this. I'm curious, what about your library board? Are those elected positions?
I think the Athenaeum is sort of an independent, and it's sort of independent charity, I think.
Okay. That one I was surprised that wasn't on the list of elected that I saw. So.
Yeah, no, it has its own board. I don't think it's part of the town government at all.
Really?
So that's our preview, and we'll be sending it out to you. We do have a chart of what some other council managers, towns have done, so that you can see, are these positions generally elected or appointed in different council manager forms? Obviously, you can do what's best for your community, but we'll give you some background information on that to look over.
Do you, put a question just, in terms of the county and county commissioners, are they, by state law, do they have to be elected? I mean, you know, the county here on Nantucket is really a very thin, has very little revenue, very little expense. It just does some functional things. I was just wondering, is that something you could change to appointed county commissioners and save the time of an election? I mean, it's just been the select board, you know?
Yeah, so you don't have an election of county commissioners. Under your county charter, the county commissioner, the select board members are the county commissioners, by default, just automatically. And your town manager is automatically your county manager. There are some elected county positions such as the sheriff, the register of deed, so on and so forth. In your current county charter, those positions, the charter specifically says this charter will not modify anything about those positions, what their roles are, what their duties are, or how they are elected. It basically says they're excluded from the operation of the charter. I guess I'll put a little bit of maybe a little speed bump here. As we understand your current charge, you're charged with modifying the town charter. Sort of by default, that means that you're going to modify some things in the county charter because they're, like we talked about, the select board. If you don't have one anymore, then you've got to make those minor modifications to the county charter. But it doesn't really give you the charge to modify the county charter. So I don't know how deeply you want to get into that. Based on our review, we think that the changes you're going to make to your town government, you don't have to spend a lot of time in the county.
So you're arguing just convert to town council and presume that we can edit the county charter, that the town council steps into the shoes of the select board and everything else goes on as before.
Correct.
Okay.
Fine.
I'm in. All right. Any other comments or business before the committee this afternoon? Thank you, everybody. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Caroline?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bo?
I printed these.
Rachel?
Aye.
Well, I'm the
Joe,
one who
aye.
printed them.
Thanks, everybody.
And the one who procured.
Anthony and Pat, thanks so much. Appreciate your time. We got through that very well.
They came up to me.